and introduce myself. My name is Victor Lang. I'm the Vice President of Enterprise Systems here at Smartbridge. Smartbridge is a systems integration company. We help with implementations of JD Edwards, upgrades of JD Edwards, conversions to BI Publisher, and other ancillary systems as well. My colleague that's joining us, his name is Jairam Angati. Jairam, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Jairam Reganti. I'm Senior JD Consultant in Smartbridge. I have 12 years of JD experience and done several projects in different industries. I have very good experience in both embedded and enterprise BI Publisher.
So I'm just going to briefly go over the agenda today and cover basically the topics for today's webinar. We're going to go over what BI Publisher is, for those of you not familiar. Just a quick overview of its capabilities and the limitations that come with the embedded BI Publisher as part of JD Edwards 9.0. Then I'm going to go into the case study and really talk about how we approach the project, some of the best practices in terms of getting the project started and understanding the complexities, and the overview of the timeline. And then we're going to go into some details of BI Publisher itself and some special techniques that we use to overcome some of the higher level requirements and challenges. Then I'll recap the best practices, and that'll be the end of the webinar. So to begin with, what is BI Publisher? Well, BI Publisher is an Oracle product. It basically used to be called XML Publisher. It's a reporting tool that we use to distribute and create reports in various layouts. The good thing to know is the embedded version of BI Publisher comes free when you upgrade to JD Edwards 9.0. And that Oracle is standardizing along all its tools to use BI Publisher in terms it is part of the Oracle Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition stack. So it is a standard tool among all of Oracle's products for reporting. So let me just go over the architecture. The way BI Publisher works is it has an extract, transform, publish, and distribution process. Basically, in terms of embedded BI Publisher, you're able to extract data via the UBE, which is JD Edwards data, and pull that into an XML type format. Then what it does is it transforms it using a BI Publisher template, and you can define that using a report definition. There's various ways of doing that. You can use Word, Excel, XSL, and there's some translations that occur as part of this transformation. We'll go into more detail about how we can leverage some of those transformations later. And then you have the ability to publish that report document, and you have various options such as Excel, HTML, PDF, various choices in how you want to publish and then how you want to distribute. You can save that file to the file directory, you can email it, you can print it out, and you can even extend it beyond that in terms of if you have some software that allow you to fax it and other options such as electronic distribution. So I want to kind of go over some of the layers here in terms of the construction of a document via BI Publisher. The data logic, the layout, and the translation occur within BI Publisher. Now, sometimes you may want to put a lot of logic in your templates. We don't necessarily recommend this because the logic in terms of business logic and business rules is probably best suited to go into JD Edwards. JD Edwards is going to be your processing engine and do a lot of the heavy lifting. And we'll discuss ways you can use JD Edwards, UBEs, and business functions to handle a lot of the business logic, business rules, and then really leave the presentation logic within BI Publisher. So then that's your layout, your translation. You may do some basic data logic, and then you have the ability to do some small functions using XSL and Java if you have repeated presentation type logic or data logic that you want to leverage within multiple BI Publisher templates. But I would recommend the heavy-duty data logic and business logic occur within the JD Edwards engine. So just to recap, what are the embedded BIP capabilities? Well, obviously you can separate the data. It's easy to design and build reports. You have the ability to do translation and localization, so basically multi-language support, allowing you to create one template and then a language file for translating to each specific language. So you'll need a language file for each language that you wish to translate to. The ability to burst and distribute reports, the ability to republish them, and as we talked about, multiple output types, PDF, Excel, Word, and ways to deliver those. Now this is slightly different than the interactive BI Publisher or the enterprise version of BI Publisher. This version of BI Publisher does not come with JD Edwards 9.0. It's a separate product. It's a standalone product that you would install on a separate server. It has much more capabilities, but it's not a separate. It is a separate license that you would need to purchase. It's a full reporting capabilities in terms of creating dashboards, drill down reports, allowing users to do some ad hoc analysis with Analyzer, scheduling their own reports, and basically accessing data outside of JD Edwards. So you have other databases, other systems where you want to use BI Publisher and connect to those data sources. You would use this version of BI Publisher. It also, because it is standalone on a separate server, you have all the infrastructure and support that you would want to customize for it. If you wanted to cluster it, provide some redundancy there, you can all do all those different types of things in this type of BI Publisher environment. So what did we do in our case study? Well, obviously we used BI Publisher embedded version because this was the version that came free with JD Edwards. This version allows us to do most of what we need to do with the reporting, but of course there were some caveats in terms of when we were on Create Form, there's a lot of features that don't necessarily come or translate directly to BI Publisher. What's important to do is review what you're doing with either Create Form or the third-party reporting tool that you're using and understand all the requirements. If there's something that seems more advanced, if you're binding multiple documents, if you're printing the specific printer trays, then look at what BI Publisher provides out of the box and maybe do a proof of concept, because there's multiple options, multiple ways to tackle some of these challenges. You may want to do a proof of concept on a couple of these things, determine the feasibility, if it makes sense, and what the level of complexity is, and that would go into your estimating and project planning process. Once you kind of have an idea of the complexity and if something that you're going to try is feasible, then I would go into the design. And where you really can leverage some time savings here is if you design your templates properly and design the structure of your architecture properly, you can leverage, reuse business functions, reuse templates. That'll save you development time and testing time because you're using the same template, and you're just either just using one template that you're translating, or you're using different processing options and leveraging the same template to produce different types of logos or watermarks. So a lot of work can go into design to save you development time later. And then make the appropriate adjustments in JD Edwards if necessary, so that you may need to copy a UBE or customize a UBE. Make sure you leverage the capabilities of JD Edwards to meet the full requirement of what you're trying to deliver overall in the report. So what did we do in terms of understanding the complexity of reports and reviewing all the reports that we wanted to convert? Well, we had all kinds of reports, everything from paychecks to invoices, statements of account. Some were very simple in terms of layout and design, but they have requirements that required us to distribute them via either email, fax, or saving it to a file. They also had different requirements in terms of dynamic content, different watermarks, different types of printout information based on the version or processing options. So what we did here was we estimated the complexity. A simple report, basically something that you're just basically printing out the content, is very easily less than a week. Assuming that you've already defined the requirements and you understand that it's just a basic report, then you can probably do a lot of the design, documentation, development, and unit tests in a few days. Something that requires more complexities, for example, our AP checks had overflow, and we also needed to handle binding that to the remittance advice. In addition, we had to assign output to go to certain printer trays. Well, even though we had the requirements locked down in terms of what it needed to accomplish, design and creating a proof of concept to make sure that we could send output to specific printer trays and understand the different options available for that feature, that took a little bit longer. So that's anywhere from a week and a half to 2 weeks. It's important that you kind of do this up front, understand what the complexities are, do some proof of concepts to understand how you can implement some of these advanced features, and come up with an overall timeline that you think is accomplishable in terms of your conversion. So I'm going to go into some of the specific requirements in this case study that we had to overcome. For example, our client, they printed paychecks every week, and they printed approximately 20,000 checks and advices. So it's a huge volume of documents that were getting printed. So we had to make sure we maximize the performance. We had to generate a positive pay file to go with this. And because of this high volume of checks, they're folding their own checks. And in cases of folding the checks, there could be issues where something gets torn or damaged. So they wanted to be able to reprint checks or advices as needed, but not have to reprocess the entire batch of checks. So we had to create an option to find out how to best reprint the checks. And then because there's sorting involved and grouping, we had to make sure that the sort sequence and the print sequence of the report was synchronized, and that even though BI Publisher bursts the document, that there's a certain sequence that it bursted in so that people processing it can package those checks properly. So the other check was the AP check, and this required us to not only print to a specific printer tray, but handle overflow and also handle the binding of the remittance device, so that when you printed out the AP check, the remittance device, which is a separate document, came out with it. So a little additional complexity here, and we had to create a proof of concept to really understand what options we had in terms of how can we print to a specific printer tray. There were some simpler documents, purchase orders, invoices, statement of accounts were very straightforward, and we were able to leverage using one template for each type of these documents, even though they had needs in terms of different watermarks and different distribution outputs. We were still able to use one template for each of those different document types to save us time, and then use common business functions, common logic that we could apply to each of those documents, leverage that for time saving. So we'll go into more detail about that later. So just to recap, some of the challenges that we encountered were reprinting and sequencing checks, signing things to different trays, changing some of the structures of the UBEs. For example, with the pick slips, the UBE only prints one pick slip each time you run the UBE. So the users wanted to be able to do a batch of pick slips. So we had some structural changes that we had to modify so that we can print pick slips in batch. Performance considerations for large volumes of documents, being able to do dynamic watermarks, and then being able to email the output or save the output, how we want to distribute it, and be able to use that almost as a processing option so that we don't have to create different templates for each of those distribution routes. Understanding the challenges, you have to kind of marry that and understand what BIP can and can't do. For example, in BIP, you can save output to a file directory, but that setting is a universal setting. So if you turn that on, all your output will get saved to the file directory. And you may or may not want that. There might be very large files that you don't want saved all the time, or you're printing constantly and throughout the day, and you need to keep maintaining that file directory. That might not be the best option for you. Renaming the output, that's something that can't be controlled. So I can't go and change the name of that PDF file that gets generated. That may be something that would be nice to have been able to do, because we would be able to want to sort or identify certain documents by certain naming conventions, but you can't control that. And then when you burst with BI Publisher, you can't enforce a sequence. So that was a major limitation that we had to work around and figure out how can we create something that did a certain sort sequence and printed in that sequence, but still bursted. And then routing to specific printer trays. This is where we did a proof of concept, and we'll talk about how we figured out how to print to a specific tray. If you have pre-printed check paper, and then you have normal paper on a different tray, and you're using both, you want to be able to route the check document to that pre-printed paper. And then tabular reports. So some of those won't work with BIP, so we have to find a workaround around that. So Jairam, let's go over some of the techniques that we had to use to overcome these challenges.
Thank you, Victor, for the high-level overview. In one of the earlier slides, Victor touched up the specific challenges we faced. Over the next 15 minutes, I'll take up each challenge and briefly explain what we did to overcome the challenges to meet the requirement. I'll start with sequencing. To process BI publisher documents in sequential order, when bursting feature is enabled, there is no direct way to accomplish this. When bursting feature is enabled, BIP splits the documents by the specific data field, but BIP doesn't process the document sequentially in the order it has received from JDE. BIP doesn't honor JDE sequencing. Even you put sequencing in JDE, BIP doesn't honor it. In order to process the documents in sequential order, we have created a custom business function. When check got damaged or lost or jammed in the printer that needs to be printed, there is no simple way in BI Publisher to reprint without processing the JDE data again. So for that, we have built a nice application on top of custom tables to print the checks. In order to route the finished outputs of BIP to a specific tray of the printer, there is no simple solution. There is no simple way provided in JDE Edwards BIP Publisher. For example, as Victor said, in case of AP check process, if you would like to route checks to tray 4, which contains the check stock paper, and a route overflow, and which are details, and audit log to tray 2, which contains the plain paper. So that is not possible without building a custom logic or process. So we have accomplished this through modifying a PPD file, which stands for a Postscript printer description file, which comes with the printer. We modified those files and set up printers in JDE, so adding printers and adding a default printers for the programs. The reason for routing documents is our client wanted to use the check stock paper for checks and plain legal for details. That's only the reason. So we had built a custom process. In case of PIC-Slips, a JDE report doesn't provide XML file in a structured format, so which is required to design a BIP template to be able to print multiple PIC-Slips at a time. So we had to modify UBE by adding a PIC-Slip number into a detail section and added a code on the template to support multiple PIC-Slips. So in case of email routing, we had a variety of requirements at our client. The client wanted the report distribution based on the value chosen in the processing options of UBE. For example, if option is 1, they want to distribute the report to user who ran the report. If option is 2, distribute the report to user as well as vendor. So to achieve that, we have built a custom business function which pulls the email addresses and construct them, and we set up the email XML tag on the RD job for reports distribution. Watermark, so we use all the time. There are various reasons you may want to have watermark changed for different versions of the report. For example, the watermark can be used to identify a duplicate document, like reprints, or mark the draft version of a document. We built a simple logic to print watermark on the report, which can be passed dynamically through processing options of the report. Because of performance, our client was printing 20,000 checks using Formscape in approximately 5 hours. So before converting to BI Publisher, this was a big challenge for us to meet or improve this performance. Additionally, so we have built a custom business function to ensure the sequential process, so which consumes some additional amount of time. So to improve the performance, we maximize the printer throughput by pooling multiple printers. So we have used the Microsoft Windows printer pooling feature, and we defined a single printer with multiple IP ports that route to multiple printers. So when BI Publisher routes finished documents to the printer, this feature takes care of distributing the reports to multiple printers equally. Here I'll walk through the techniques we have created in detail. So in case of data sequencing, which is nothing but a processing documents in sequential order, in order to process and route the documents in sequential order, which was required in check printing, we had to build a custom process. The main reason why our client wants to print the check sequentially is there is a specific team, and each team member is assigned to a range of geographical areas. What they do is they get printed checks and put them in envelope to distribute. We built a wrapper UBE around the main UBEs, which is responsible for sequencing. The wrapper UBE or driver UBE launches the check printing program for a geographical area which consists of several stores. And it waits for a check printing program to be completed before the next instance of the check printing program is launched for the next area. So so that is how we have used the custom business function to achieve that functionality. So we had a similar challenge with AP check process also. When it comes to AP check printing, you all know that there are 3 separate UBEs that produce the output need to print the check. The first one is check printing program, the second overflow, and the third one is audit log UBE. We built a similar business function to sequence the output to make sure the check, overflow, audit log belonging to a check are printed together instead of all the checks printing first, then the overflow, followed by the audit log. So if we didn't do that, so user has to grab all of them and put together, which consumes a lot of their time. So the sequencing process can be used when you want to process or route the documents to the printer sequentially, or see the completed jobs in sequential order in the work submitted jobs. Here is a sample code of the business function I was talking about. It makes sure the data sequencing. It actually consists of 2 parts. The first part is to get the server job number from the job master table for the batch version. Once it gets it, then it goes, the second part goes by the server job number and checks the BIP job status. So if it is not done yet, and it waits for a second or 2 seconds and checks it again. So once the job is done, it returns the status to the UBE. It's a simple code. You can easily understand it. And this is a screenshot of the custom application we have built to reprint the checks advisors. It mainly consists of two parts. The header part is used to filter the data and add the checks to reprint queue. And the second part, which is a grid, shows the checks based on the selection. How we built this, we have created a custom payroll tables by copying the original tables. And these tables will be populated by paycheck and advice programs at the end of the processing. On top of the custom tables, we have built this application which allows you to print checks and advisors based on the selection you have chosen. Usually we normally use this application, our client use this application when like check got damaged or jammed in the printer. So this is very useful, and this avoids reprocessing a JDA data again. So there is a way, but that takes longer. If you route to the JDA way, it consumes a lot of time. We don't want to reprocess the JDA data. So we built this process to make sure. So we are reprinting checks easily. And so this is the PPD file, the Postscript printer description file, which comes with the printer. So we have modified PPD files for a AP check process. And what we did was we made 2 copies of the PPD files. And so in the PPD file, you see there is a section called paper sources. So when you change the sequence of the tray, so when you print a document, so the program checks the sequence and route the document to the corresponding tray. So it allows you to define default tray to choose when printing a file. So for AP check, the check stack had to be selected from tray 2, and plain paper for audit log had to be selected from tray 4. So we ended up defining 2 PPD files. So one of the PPD file had tray 2 as a default tray, and other PPD file has tray 4 as default tray. So in addition, we also had to define our logical printers in JDE that use these PPD files to select the paper from the appropriate tray while printing. And the next step is adding printers with both files we have created. So once we copied the PPD files, we copied them into enterprise server, into a resource folder. And then the next step is adding printers, one for tray 2 and another for tray 4. So JDE doesn't allow you to add one printer twice, even with different PPD files. So what we did was we have created a logical printer, which is the alias name of the original printer. It appears as a second printer, but it's a one printer. So using this option, we set up both printers for both trays as shown in the screenshot. So we should add the PPD file name in the printer model, as you see here, at the end of the name. So that is how it identifies which tray to route the document to. For example, printer 1 is the original printer and the printer 2 is a logical printer, but it's a one printer. Once we are done with this, the next thing is creating a default printer for the programs. This is a simple step. I think you're all aware of this process. So that is how we have achieved a tray selection. As you see, this is a design of the print PixLip program. As I said earlier, PixLip program doesn't provide the structured XML. At our client, users had to run the program for just one payslip at a time until we found the solution. It's a cumbersome process. You can imagine how difficult it would be when you are asked to print a payslip one at a time. After a thorough review and research, we added a payslip number in the detail section, as you see here. So that will be included in a detail section of the XML file, and it becomes a good reference for the program for sorting or write a special logic based on the payslip number. See, the payslip number, which is highlighted in XML file, that's a field we have added in the design. We also added code in the template. What we did was we have added that field in the report design. Then we took that XML tag and wrote a code on the BIP template to sort by payslip number. It just sorts the payslips in ascending order and prints multiple orders once. By just creating a UBE and structuring the BI publisher template, we implemented a more efficient way to print payslips. Of course, there is no much logic here, but we spent a lot of time to find this solution. Watermark. This is another technique which took a lot of our time to find the solution. It seems simple, but we did a lot of research around that. Our client wanted to control the watermark text, which will be printed on the reports, and support dynamic text changes to the watermark. For all custom JDE programs, we actually came up with standard processing option template, which contains all the options required for BIP programs. So watermark is also one of those fields. So user puts watermark in the processing options while running the program, then it will be printed on the report. So we grabbed the watermark tag from the XML file and put it in a Word template by just using custom watermark feature. That's a standard feature. You see option. If you open a Word file, you see that option. Just choose a custom option and put a tag over there so that when you run the program, your text will be passed to the XML, and from XML that will be printed on the report. That's it. It's a simple thing. Email routing, you all know that it's very important. Once we printed, most of the cases we route the documents to the vendors. Our client wanted the report distribution based on the value chosen in the processing options of the report. For example, if option is 1, distribute the report to user who ran the report. If option is 2, distribute the report to user and vendor. So in order to achieve this, we have built a simple, nice business function to construct the email addresses based on the options chosen in the processing options, and used business function in the report to have it included in the XML file and set up on RD job to distribute the reports. So it's a simple thing. So in this way, we avoided hard coding and provided flexibility to the users to choose one of the different processing options. Performance, as I said earlier, we have used the Microsoft printer pooling feature to improve the performance. So we have installed the printers, for example, printer 1 and printer 2 on server 1, and enable the printer pooling. The printer pooling feature distributes the jobs to both printers one after another. Our client is printing 20,000 checks advisors every week, just imagine. So Farmscape was using 5 hours. Now using JDE BIP combination. So they're able to print 20,000 checks in just about 3 hours. So we have taken advantage of Microsoft pooling feature.
Thank you, Jairam. I think you can see there was quite a few challenges that we had to face. And I recommend that you do your own proof of concepts when you undergo these projects to analyze what options you have available, what can be done, and what makes sense based on your users and they want to see things function. You know, for example, our users wanted to be able to reprint checks, and since they print such a large volume of checks, we built a custom application in JD Edwards just to facilitate the check reprint process so they can find the check, tag multiple checks to be reprinted, and process them easily without having to rerun all the data processing that's required when you run payroll. So just to recap some of these best practices, Embedded BI Publisher does have its limitations. It's not the enterprise version. So you have to use some consideration for this when you plan out your project and understand what functionality is in the box, what functionality can you use JD Edwards for. One thing that we decided to do early on was try to do a lot of the advanced, complicated logic, business logic, and centralize that in JD Edwards, and also use business functions where we could to reuse the code and leverage that capability in the JD Edwards development environment, and really use BI Publisher more as our presentation layer. It provides the layout, it provides language translation, those types of things, but not any heavy-duty logic, more data-level logic. So if you want to just use basic documents where you have a logo and you like to have a nicely formatted report or an invoice or something of that nature, BI Publisher is very easy to use, and as we estimated, it may only take a few days, definitely less than a week, to do some of those basic documents. If you want to do something where you access multiple data sources, create dashboards, you're really looking for an enterprise reporting tool beyond just output from JD Edwards, you may want to consider the enterprise version of BI Publisher. The key is to understand all your requirements up front and design and architect appropriately based on what your needs are. Another caveat that you may want to consider is how you want to save and store documents. There could be performance and data storage issues if you choose to save all of your documents to the file directory. Is it appropriate that instead of saving it, you just reprint them when you need to do a reprint? What options are you, wanting to consider, and what are your requirements? You want to be able to match all those things and plan your project accordingly to your business needs. So basically, that concludes our webinar. I believe we captured many of your questions, and what we will do is we will email you our responses to your questions. In addition, what we'll also do is email you a PDF copy of this presentation for your own use. Also, I would also like to announce a few upcoming things. One is we will be doing a series of blogs. All of the blogs that you have already been reading on our Smartbridge website that covers BI Publisher and a lot of these techniques in detail, we will also be continuing a blog series on JD Upgrade 9.1 tools and talking about the features and benefits that come when you use the 9.1 tool set. We will also be presenting a webinar in early April where we will discuss 9.1 tools and provide you a demo so you can see some of the advanced features of the one-view reporting and demo some of the user experience and the interface changes that come with it. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this webinar, and feel free to contact me at my email address, as you can see here, blang@smartbridge.com. We will be attending Collaborate, so if you want to reach out and contact me, we can definitely meet at Collaborate, or you can contact me with my contact information here. Thank you very much.